All right, everyone, really quickly before we begin the video, there is a contest. So be sure to stick around to the end of the video so you know what the contest is. But without further ado, here's more of me. Hey everybody, welcome back to Evolve Sport Nutrition. Today's video, we are finally able to re-record the collagen making video. We got our water boiling, so let's go. Alright, so in today's video we are making collagen from chicken bones. Now the reason why we are doing that is because collagen is all the rage right now. We will be making a video on the health benefits of collagen. We're going to talk about a few of those health benefits during that video, but the real reason why is because this is a great way of getting a lot of nutrition. And a lot of people don't even really think about this, right? Because it's a lot of work. And I will say this right off the bat, it is a lot of work. Today, yes, the balloon's behind me, and yeah, it's my birthday. And believe it or not, I have a few hours before I have to be anywhere. So what I'm going to do is actually make some chicken broth. Alright, so we are making collagen today, and the star of the show is these chicken bones, or these chicken carcasses, that I got from a grocery store. And the great thing about it is, depending on how good or bad your butcher is, there's actually a ton of meat left on these bones. So if you ever wanted to work on your knife skills, and for example, scrape a lot of this meat off this bone and just kind of use it to make other things like chicken dumplings and those kind of stuff, you very well could. But today what we're going to do is we're going to go for a chicken collagen bone broth kind of extraction. Now, normally what I do to prep up these chicken carcasses, if I was making something closer to the idea of pho with chicken, like pho ca, which is the Vietnamese chicken noodle soup kind of thing, then what I would do is pull a lot of the skin off of the carcass before I put it in the boiling water. But we're not going to do that. The reason why is because I'm going to show you a few different tricks to get this fat off of the surface so it doesn't make the stock skunky. But really, it's just a lot of work, and realistically, there's some collagen left in the skin as well. So what we're going to do is actually use some of the techniques from making pho and be able to extract that collagen, because making pho is the exact same process where you're looking at slow, applied, consistent heat to extract the collagen out of the bones as much as possible without burning the collagen and overheating it. So we have a big pot of water boiling in the background. We're going to get these chickens into the water, and we're going to blanch them real quick. Alright, so here's the deal. We have a giant stock pot of water boiling right now. What we're going to do is take our chicken bones, we're going to blanch each chicken bone carcass for about a minute or two, really to get a lot of the scum, a lot of the crap, gunk off the actual chicken. This is a process that's very important in making pho and a lot of Asian stocks, to be perfectly honest. You would use the same thing for pork bones, beef bones, any kind of bone to make a stock. You'd blanch them first before you'd apply them. Otherwise, you get a really, I can't even describe the mouthfeel, but it's like it coats and films your mouth. So we don't want that. We want a good, clean broth. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is get a pair of tongs, and we're going to just dunk them in one at a time. So let's go. We are going to go ahead and do one of these chickens together. So let's check it out. So we got our chickens here next to the pot, and we're just going to go quickly grab this, make sure it's nice and boiling, and dunk it in. And then we are going to make sure that we put the cap and the lid back on. All right. So let's talk really quick about why we're doing that. This is a process to get a lot of the scum and the impurities off the bones, as well as the meat and the skin. Now, we're initially right now trying to pull off as much fat as possible, right, because we're going to dump this water away. But yeah, we're largely taking off the scum, the blood, the impurities, everything that's going to make our bone broth taste nasty at the end. What we're going to do is we're going to let them cool down, and then we're going to chop them up a little bit with my birthday present of a new meat cleaver. To be able to make it a little bit easier for the water to extract everything out via increased surface area. So what we're going to go ahead and do is we wait for about a minute or two until the water comes to a full boil again before we're comfortable taking it out and putting it back in. Taking the chicken out and putting it aside to cool down. Now the reason why we're doing that is largely because we don't want the temperature of the water to drop too much by throwing all of this in at once, because it's going to be really slow of a process, and that's not what we're here for. This is a slow, long process already, but I don't want to have to stand here all day. I want to be able to grind on some video games and play some missions, get some good loot drops, and of course get on with the rest of my day. The whole point of this is slow, steady extraction, so let's get to that. So it's going to be about a minute or two before this is ready, but that's largely why we're doing this step. Alright, so we can see that the water is going aggressively boiling again, so we're just going to open the lid. Yeah, it's boiling. Look in there real quick. So you see all this fat at the surface and some of the scum that's underneath. We didn't want that in our final broth, so this is a great process to kind of pre-scum, skim a lot of that kind of stuff off. So we're just gonna grab our chicken, pull it out, let it cool down, put the next one in, and make sure the water is boiling first. Alright, we are about to pull out the last chicken from our stock pot, and I just wanted to show you after 9 chickens, this is how much fat we got off and how much of the scum we got off the surface of 9 chickens. So that's going to make our final product so much tastier, but what I'm going to do right now is show you a little bit of a trick. So while I pull this out, it is January 22nd. It is roughly 4:30 p.m. and the reason for bringing this up is because it's -5 degrees Celsius outside. Now, I'm just going to use the best freezer that there is in history, the Canadian winter. So what we're going to do is, because we have to handle these chickens in a little bit, I'm just going to bring these outside on a little baking tray. Come with me. Boom. And we are going to meet the rest of the chickens out there. And voila, those will be cooled down in as little as 5 minutes, but it gives us more than enough time to clean this up. So what I'm going to go ahead and do right now is turn the heat off, and there's a lot of fat on the surface there, like I said. I don't want any of that going down my drain. So what we're going to do is actually take a ladle, scoop up as much of that as possible, put it into a heat transferable bowl, metal, and put it back outside. We're going to let it cool down, solidify, and then be able to dump the rest of the water in. All right, let's do some voiceover work. What you see me do right now is use the Chinese meat cleaver that I got for my birthday present to myself as a way of cutting up the chicken carcasses into much smaller pieces. Let's talk about why I'm doing that. It's basically because of surface area. In cooking, if you want something to cook faster or have better flavor extraction and pull everything away, you want better surface area or higher surface area, which means you want to cut everything into smaller pieces from what they used to be. Now, in this situation, I'm cutting the chicken bones and carcasses into smaller pieces of 3, so that they'll fit inside the pot, but also that they'll have better collagen extraction as I'm opening up some of the bones to the marrow, so that the water can better access the inside of the bones, better pulling out collagen. So we're going to do that, increase the surface area for all these chickens, and then we're going to start to add it to the stock pot again. So we'll see you in a bit. Alright, so I'm going to have to do a knife review on this because this thing was awesome. But before we do that, we're actually going to put the chicken bones into the empty chicken stock pot and fill it up with cold water and bring it up to a boil. The reason why we're doing that is because it's a better way of extracting collagen out of the bone more securely. That way we're not playing around with temperatures too much, yada yada, all that kind of stuff. But this is the preferred way to do it. So we're going to put all these bones into this pot and then fill it up with hot water. Cold water. Cold water. It is filled up with cold water, and we are now putting the temperature on high. We're allowing that to come to a full boil, and then once it comes down to a boil, we're going to put it down to a rolling boil and then put the lid on and let that go for about anywhere from 6 to 24 hours. Now, like I said, this is a recipe that takes a long time to do, but it's worth it. There's so much you can do with this recipe, so much you can do after it. We're going to build on top of this in future videos, but right now I just want to show you the bare essentials. So we're going to let this go right now. We're going to check in on it once it's boiled again, and we're going to bring down to a simmer, and we'll see you then. All right, so we are roughly 20 minutes past when we had the cold water go up to boil. It's almost at the point where it's about to break boil, and this is where you really want to pay attention because you do a lot of good work here. So what we're going to do is right now take a lot of the fat off of the top, which has come to the top, as well as a lot of this foam. You see this scum kind of stuff? We don't want that. That's what's going to give us a bad mouthfeel at the end of the day. So what we're going to do is go ahead and skim a lot of this stuff off, but pass it through a sieve before we go ahead and do that. All right, really quickly, I just went through the first skimming of the fat and the scum on top, and this is what it looks like. This is what you're aiming for after the first time through. Let's take a look there. You can see that, a lot of movement there, but you can see the broth is very clear now, as opposed to before where it was very cloudy. Now there's still a little bit of fat forming on top of there. That's okay. I'm going to skim that off in a little bit, but I want to show you ultimately this. All right, this, strain it into a colander, get all that gunk out. So we're going to put that aside right now. This is how much fat came off the top of the broth. Now, ultimately, this layer of fat, it will make the broth taste very fatty. Now, we don't want it to be fatty. Ultimately, we want it to be creamy at the end of the day. We want the collagen to be pulled out. So, we're taking away the fat, and then what we're going to do is we're going to use the balcony trick again, but this time, because this is, I would say, the good broth water, we're actually going to aim to save the broth water underneath the fat, let the fat solidify, scrape it all off, and then be able to add it back in, because there is collagen in there. But the issue, and the water level will go down eventually, so we want to be able to add collagen back in, not just water diluting everything. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. We're going to be able to move this out to the balcony, and then we're going to cover it up for a little bit, and make sure it's still at the rolling boil when it's covered up. So there we go. See you in a bit. All right, really quickly, I wanted to check on the bone broth situation that we got and see how we were doing. So, all right, look at that. So a lot of more chicken fat has come up to the top. We are going to skim that all off, and we're going to add a little bit more water to it. The water's a little bit high. We're going to adjust it down. That's way too rapid. That was in order to keep a good recommendation on how to actually keep this on overnight and not worry about it. You want to be aware of how many hours you set it on and how low the water drops. In that situation, it was pretty aggressive of a boil, and I'm going to put it down to a lower boil, but it basically dropped about from this top knuckle down there. So that's a good amount of fluid. That is roughly, I would say, about 2-3 liters or so. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to skim off the rest of this fat, and we're going to put it outside, and we're going to boil some more water, put it in before we check out for the night, because that's all we really need to do, and then it can go overnight. So I'm going to skim off some of the fat now, and I will see you later. Okay, so the stock has been on the stove for roughly 24 hours now. This is the longest one I've ever done. Let's take a look. All right, beautiful. So I turned it up toward the end just a little bit to get really a little bit higher temperature to get the fat to really come to the top. And what I've done is, before I started shooting, is mix everything up. Now you can see that the skin has separated from the bone, and what we're gonna do, and the bones and all the meat have fallen off everything. So this is gonna be great in a little bit. What I'm gonna do is let this rest for a little bit, and then skim off all the fat and the skin with this guy, and then get the rest of the fat off, and then we're about to finish it off. So just give it a minute for all the meat to settle down to the bottom. We're just going to take all the skin off the top and then get rid of it, and then, yeah, we're done. So I went ahead and left these out on the balcony overnight. It was basically -8 degrees Celsius the entire night. And you can see the bone broth has frozen underneath the layer of fat, which makes the fat way, way, way easier to skim off. Now you can see here where this one didn't fully freeze, and I can actually strain a lot of the bone broth from the surface layer of fat and the surface layer of ice, and I added that quickly back into the stock pot. And I am now scraping off all the fat just because, out of curiosity, I want to see how much fat I actually pulled off the bones and everything like that. So we're going to record that or test it out at the end of the video, but check it all out. This is extra stock that you would have otherwise thrown away. So keep that in mind. So in this section, I wanted to show you in detail what it looks like to skim off the fat, and of course what the final product looks like. In this stage, just immediately before I recorded this clip, I went ahead, used a ladle, and mixed around all the meat so that the skin would float to the top. Now the skin floats to the top because, of course, it is fat, and fat separates from water. So this is why we get the good opportunity to take all this layer of skin and fat off the top that we don't want in our final product, and it makes it a lot easier and cleaner in general. So what we're going to do after we skim off all this skin and all the fat from the top is we're going to put this outside. We're going to separate this into smaller containers first to let it cool down a lot faster so we can start portioning it out. So we will see you in a little bit. Okay, so let's talk about the elephant in the room. You will notice that halfway through this video, like this point on, the video editing gets significantly better and different. Well, I shouldn't say better, it's just different. It's because I ended up using a different editing software program halfway through editing this video. Hooray for ADHD. yeah, that's just the elephant in the room. I'm not going back to re-edit the first half. I'm just going to show you this for what it is. All right, so what we're seeing now is me separating the final broth from the solids in the stock, so the meat and of course the bones. We're separating it into smaller and smaller containers because this way the increased surface area can help decrease the temperature of the stock much faster on the balcony. So we're continuing to separate this into smaller and smaller pots, and here's the final amount of chicken and bones that is coming out of the pot. Now it's a huge amount. Unfortunately, I didn't weigh the amount of chicken. I thought it would be a misrepresentation as it's cooked and there's fluids in the meat. But what we're going to do is separate this meat later on, and we are going to use it for a different video, and I'm going to show you what that is later on. Right now, the amount of meat that's being separated, it's a lot, and what I'm going to show you here is how surface area for food works both ways. So I'm just going to slow down the video just a little bit, and what we're going to see is that I separate the meat onto two separate trays and I start increasing the surface area. This is to help everything cool down much faster. Now, if we were to leave everything in a pile just like this tray, it would cool down so slow. The center would probably be hot, and this way it's going to cool down a lot faster so I can handle it with my hands. So here's me putting it on the balcony, and hooray for editing because this looked very different initially. But check this out. Look at all the steam that's coming off and into the balcony. Free refrigeration. It's -8. Colder than a freezer. So here we've got the chicken fully cooled down. It was approximately 5 to 10 minutes. And what we're doing here is basically separating the bones from the meat. Now, what I'm doing is finding the biggest bones I can possibly separate, pulling those away. At this point, we've boiled this stock for about 24 hours. Now, all the small bones and all that kind of stuff, they will crumble up and, again, is a source of nutrition for what we're going to do with this food next. But right now, I'm taking out the biggest bones that will cause issues down the road, and we're separating these bones. And again, we're going to do something with these bones in a separate video. So the meat and the bones will have their own video as to what I do with them. But right now, all you're seeing me do is just separating the big pieces from the meat as much as possible. So here we're doing the final separation of the meat from the bones. There's a little bit of meat stuck on the bones that we do not want, because what I want to do is dry out these bones. So we're going to blast it with the spray attachment from the hose to get use the pressure to really blast off all the bones, and then get them to a bowl so that we can set them apart later and really let them dry out, and we will see these bones again in a future video. So keep that in mind, but for now, we just want these bones to be nice and clean and no meat on them. Now, this is a really great way of blasting the meat off the little neck bones that are still really hard and can't break down and crumble in your fingers. That's what the texture that we're looking for. So always, if a bone can crumble in your fingers, you can leave it in. It's not worth trying to separate out, but if it's still hard to the touch, blast the meat off the bones. Okay, so let's do a little bit of number crunching, a little bit of science, a little bit of math. Now, I was interested in seeing what the nutrition availability or nutrition facts of this broth was, but believe it or not, there's no data for that online. So what I chose to do is compare my bone broth to the top selling one in Canada right now, and as another one in the States. Now, the one in the States shows the amount of simmer time, which is 14 hours, and it shows a comparable amount of protein, about 9 to 10 grams for both the Canadian brand as well as the American brand, for about 240 milliliters. So let's assume that that is the maximum amount of protein that can pull off the bones, and that we did a 24 hour. So let's assume that there's no extra protein and that our stock is similar to the store-bought one in terms of nutritional value. Now,
The Canadian brand, and I'm only speaking to the Canadian brand right now because, of course, we're in Ontario. The current price of that brand being sold is $8.49 Canadian before tax. Now, that works out to approximately 90 cents per 100 milliliters of product, and the nutrition facts label says it's for each serving is 240 milliliters. So that gives us 3.9 servings per container, roughly equaling $2.17 per serving of collagen. Keeping in mind, per serving of collagen is roughly 9 to 10 grams. Now, that's not great. I want to compare this to one of Canada's top-selling supplements too, because of course powdered supplemental collagen and this kind of bone broth we need to take further looks at, but I just wanted to take a look at this not from a nutritional standpoint, but purely from a cost analysis standpoint. So the top brand that I have right now, the brand that I take, as well as the brand that I recommend, amongst others, is for sale right now at $27.99 before tax for a 250 gram package. Now, each serving on the nutrition facts label says 1 heaped tablespoon, or about 10 grams. So each 250 gram container has about 25 servings, or each serving is about $1.12 per serving. Now, each providing very similar nutrition around the same amount of protein. So always keep that in mind. This is a situation where food first is not always the best for your financial health. Keeping in mind, you got to make sure you're making responsible decisions to not break the bank for your health, right? So if you're looking at this and cost as a consideration, I would recommend the supplemental form of collagen. Plus, it's a lot easier to do and all that kind of stuff. But the point of today's video is to take a look at what we're doing ourselves with this cooking process. Now, full disclosure, what I spent on the chicken bones for these 3 packages of chicken bones, and each package had 3 carcasses, was $6. So that's $6 plus tax is $6.78 Canadian. Now let's break down the math even longer, because I know you're laughing to yourself, and you should be. Each small one of those containers is roughly 750 milliliters, and we have roughly 8 containers. That gives us 6 liters of broth. Now, there's a bigger container with a light blue lid. That is 1.5 liters. So the total amount of chicken stock that I made for $6.78 is 7.5 liters. Also, don't take into account the spillage that you're seeing on screen right now. If we apply the same financial info into my chicken stock or bone broth and collagen mix, we now have $6.78 divided by 7,500 milliliters. That works out to roughly 9 cents per 100 milliliters. If we are considering the nutritional value, 9 cents per 100 milliliters is a ridiculously good price for collagen. Keeping in mind that we can use this for other aspects too, not just, oh, we're just going to drink this. But we can make soups with it, we can make noodle soups with it, ramen, we can make a whole bunch of stuff with it, and I'm going to show you in future videos how to do that. Of course, the financial info is skewed because the variables that we have to take into consideration is the cost of labor, the input costs like electrical, hydro, utilities, and all that, the cost of your kitchen equipment, packaging costs, shipping costs related to the brand that's sold on a grocery store shelf. So those things all have to be factored in to everything. That's why I say a lot of these things, you're paying for the cost of convenience, not necessarily the cost of health. So always remember that when you are shopping and considering adding chicken stock, bone broth, and collagen to your diet and your nutrition for health reasons. And one thing is, we will be talking about the health benefits of collagen in a separate video, so stay tuned for that. And I also did the math, a little bit more math as I'm talking right now. So basically, homemade is 10 times cheaper than store-bought. Keep that in mind, again, with the variables of the financial costs set aside. But this is the number that I think is hilarious. At 7.5 liters, Every store-bought package is about 946 milliliters. Applying that math, this is $67.33 worth of chicken stock. I should be selling this stuff.
Alright everyone, thank you so much for watching today's video. I know it was a long one. I promise you I will get better at video editing. But until then, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the comment section, and don't forget the bell notification icon. In fact, the funniest thing is while I'm editing this video, I'm realizing how often I say the word alright. So let's have a little bit of fun because I love laughing at myself. The first person to comment down below the correct amount of times I say the word alright in this video gets to make a video topic request of their choice in the month of March. So comment down below, hit like, hit subscribe, hit the notification icon so that my ADHD doesn't prevent you from seeing the material and the content drop first. Thank you all again so much for watching. Cheers!